Intelligent Systems is no stranger to turn-based tactics fans, with Advance Wars popularizing the genre on the Game Boy Advance upon its release nearly 20 years ago now. The West got their first taste of Fire Emblem, a once Japan-only exclusive, for the first time in their hands with Fire Emblem 7, The Binding Blade. The game's popularity and sales guaranteed its appeal in the West, and paved the way for many more titles to reach stateside, including GameCube exclusive Path of Radiance and its Wii sequel Radiant Dawn to critical appeal. The most recent example, and possibly where the series got the biggest boost in popularity, was with the 3DS exclusive Fire Emblem Awakening, which ushered in a new era for the series, with its more casual approach and extra difficulty options, tailoring your experience for challenge or just for story enjoyment. Fire Emblem is notorious for its difficulty, especially the permadeath mechanics, but Awakening brought forward a new mode which lets you keep members of your party who perish in battle. But just when you thought Nintendo couldn't surprise us anymore with changes to the Fire Emblem franchise's main titles, in comes Fates, or as it's known in Japan, Fire Emblem If, presenting two different scenarios for you to explore. You are Korin, a young prince or princess, raised in Nor but born in the kingdom of Hoshido. Depending on the version you choose, you'll be going through two very different stories, each with their own unique characters and relationships to uncover. What's interesting about it is how it eventually connects itself when you start a third campaign called Revelations. Revelations should only be experienced once you complete both campaigns, and is arguably the best story. If you're not inclined to waste close to 50 hours for both, just play through Birthright for an easier experience and more interesting story, while Conquest is much more technical in its approach in each battle, but suffers a lot more in its story segments. Don't expect the story to be a masterpiece. It's enjoyable and fun to go through, but it won't win you any prizes for its storytelling. It's very cookie cutter, and it's saved by the cast of characters it presents and the character building it gives you. There are some more notable scenes closer to the end which are really well done, but overall, if you've played a Fire Emblem game before, you know what to expect. Revelations is probably where you'll spend most of your time, and this should have been the game all along. The story is much more connected, and you get to see both points of view from the outside in when you refuse to pick a side. Without going into spoiler territory, you can pretty much recruit most of the characters from each side, and by mid-game have the biggest number of troops in a Fire Emblem game yet. Fire Emblem Fates is a turn-based tactics game, which is divided by chapters to progress through the story. Each of these chapters present a map in which you will do battle under certain conditions, the most common being to defeat the boss or seizing an objective. You take turn in moving your units through the field and perform an action such as battling or using items. Your turn ends when every unit has taken action or by ending it manually through the menu. Battle mechanics and calculation is pretty straightforward, with a rock-paper-scissors approach to combat in which some weapons triumph over others. Tactical thinking is necessary, where to position your characters in relation to your enemies' equipment, and thinking ahead to where they will possibly move and prevent your backline of healers and mages from getting killed early on. There's a lot of other neat mechanics that got introduced with Awakening and refined and polished with Fates, such as the pairing and partner systems. Pairing happens when joining two units into a single one, with the backup unit providing bonus stats to the main one, with the bonuses being larger according to the pair support rating. The partner system is much more straightforward, in which you simply need to have two units next to each other, and then when a unit attacks, it will receive a backup for the partner unit, with a small stat increase also depending on the support rating for those characters. Outside of combat, you can maintain and build a base of your own, by building barracks and shops to keep your characters well stocked in weapons. And speaking of weapons, this is also one of the biggest changes since Awakening. Fates is the first game in which regular weapons no longer break after a number of uses. Some weapons, like healing staffs, do have a number of uses like before, but most no longer do. It's a welcome addition, but I think the game loses some of its charm by feeding you weapons that never break, and having great weapons at the start really hurts some of the characters and lessens the challenge. Back to the base of operations, this is where your downtime is most important. You can interact with your characters, build relationships, battle at the arena for prizes, customize your layout to defend from invaders, and forge and upgrade a plethora of items. Invasions are also very interesting and challenging. You can get invasions from single-player side quests or from multiplayer teams through Street Pass or wireless, and even send your own team into wireless battles to invade other players' castles. This serves as a great way to practice your tactics. Single-player invasions are also a great way to level up your underused characters. Overall, the combat improvements made to damage calculations and mechanics make it a very polished system, with a lot of variety in unit combinations and several hours of tactical goodness. Graphics are pretty good, the full motion cinematics are a treat for the fans of the series and look pretty impressive. Voice acting could be better, but it's serviceable, and while the sprites might seem reused from previous games, the 3D models while in combat and in-engine cutscenes look very good. The animations look smooth and beautiful throughout, although a lot of them were basically reused from Awakening. The game's soundtrack is on point as usual. Fire Emblem never ceases to amaze in this front, and the battle music layering itself onto the map's theme is very cool sounding and awesome to hear when you're going into battle. The transitions and dynamic soundtrack complement the action on screen seamlessly and enhance your overall enjoyment in battle when you reach the boss of a chapter, and the grand ensemble of drums and trumpets greet you for the oncoming threat about to strike you down. The orchestral compositions are very fitting and really help immerse you into the game, with varied melodies and subtlety shown where it needs to be to accompany the mood. This is the game that boasts the biggest number of songs in the series as well. Spanning 2 distinct games, the soundtrack portrays both worlds in a different light. Character development is great, although with exceptions. Some characters are very well written and designed, while others, well, there's quite a few with one-dimensional personalities and unlikable characteristics. One example of that can be Mozu, one of the first side quest members you get early on, and this is a trend with some characters. They are interesting at first, but don't move much more from that, aside from the character development you get by interacting with other characters in your army. As for more well-developed characters, these have very interesting personalities and end up being some of the more popular characters in the franchise, such as Ryoma, Takumi, Camilla, Leo, Elise, Sakura, and Hinuka, just to name a few. You'll get to care for these characters over time, and growing strong bonds with any of these characters can net you a child, which you can add to your team later on. You can marry characters just like on previous entries, and the offspring will inherit stats from both parents. These can be exploited to get crazy good characters if you got the time and patience to look up a chart of who you should ship to get the strongest army possible. One thing that was removed from the English version of the games was same-sex marriage, and a cuddling mechanic which was removed with only a static phrase with no interaction happening instead. The censorship was much heavier compared to Awakening, and the game suffered a lot of translation liberties that many fans were not happy at all to discover after a few days with the game. However, nothing that would completely detract you from your experience. Fire Emblem Fates seems overpriced for what it is. Both versions plus revelations in order to know the full scope of the story can go up to $80 to experience it all. But if you can get the special edition anywhere, make sure to pick up that one, as it contains all 3 into a single cart and no need to purchase any additional DLC unless you really want the extra maps. They're certainly enjoyable on their own, but revelations is probably mandatory to fully understand the story. With that said, Fire Emblem Fates gets a gold medal. It's a very solid and polished experience, though I despise the fact that you need to buy 3 games to fully experience it. If not for that, Fates is really something else, and nothing like this has ever been made with Fire Emblem before, so if you're a fan and haven't picked it up, you should give it a go. If you're a newcomer to the series, Birthright is the one to go with, especially for the story and ease of play. Thank you for watching. I apologize for the slowdown in uploads, but college is keeping me busy during these few months. As always, this has been Zeldrak, and I'll see you next time.